There we are. Yesterday it was Danny Kruger. Today it's Maria Corfield, well, maybe a few days ago. The headlines risk blurring the distinction between a sitting MP crossing the floor and a former minister who everyone has forgotten taking out a party card. But taken together, they map a clear story. Reform UK is turning defections into narrative capital, and Kemi Badenoch is trying to hold a shrinking tent while insisting she still has a plan which she's not told anybody. She's not told anybody what that plan is. Ooh, she's taking her time. She's biding her time. Well, she's biding her time so much that everyone's lost interest. Maria Corfield held I can't remember what seat she held anyway, Isle of Wight or something from 2015 to 2024, and served as a health minister from 2022 to 2024. After losing her seat to the Lib Dems, she returned to nursing. Her profile matters for two reasons. First, she gives reform a voice and credentials on health and women's policies from inside recent government. Second, she ties the defection story to Brexit orthodoxy by charging that the Conservatives took back control, then failed to use it. Those are her words. In her GB News hit, Corfield reframed reform as the natural home for the Conservative-minded. She predicted that the same people who dismissed Brexit are now dismissing reform and will be shocked again. This is not just recruitment patter, it is a deliberate reopening of 2016's effective coalition, grievance, promise, and a pledge to get things done that legacy parties supposedly have dodged. For Nigel Farage, Corfield's arrival lands within 24 hours of Kruger's press conference moment and reinforces momentum. It lets reform claim two complementary assets, a sitting MP who brings parliamentary oxygen and a former minister who brings governing vocabulary. Well, they've already got one in Nadine Dorries. Farage is trying to convert protest energy into statecraft signalling. Kruger was rolled out as head of preparing for government. Corfield arrives saying reform needs experience of people who know the system. The slogan is competence by import. Badenoch has conceded publicly that the party is in a rough and bumpy period. Her line is discipline and patience. Live within our means, cut welfare, rebuild trust over time. That message only works if defection's slow and polling begins to narrow. Watching a front bencher defect one day and a former minister declare for reform the next keeps the turbulent story front page and drains time from policy retail. Corfield's health brief, of course, cuts both ways. On the one hand, reform gets a former minister who can talk credibly about NHS reality, having returned to the wards. On the other hand, Corfield's past controversies, notably her stance on abortion policy and the backlash when she was appointed Minister for Women, will mobilise critics who say reform is importing the hardest edges of the Johnson years under a new flag. Expect opponents to bring those votes and, quote, back to the surface. News desks love running league tables. Depending on the outlet and the timestamp, Corfield is counted as the 13th to 16th former Tory figure to join reform. The precise count is less important than the cadence. Reform is now able to announce a new name often enough to dominate a cycle, and that cadence is the commodity. It tells wavering councillors and ex-MPs that there is company on the lifeboat. And Kruger's defection is quantitatively different. He is a sitting MP and was a shadow minister. He framed the Conservative Party as over, and Farage put him on a quasi-transitional brief to make reform look serious. That is the fulcrum that turns Corfield's membership from a lone protest into evidence of a trend. Otherwise, she's unimportant. If Kruger's seat looks winnable under the reform banner, copycats will follow. If it does not, the spell weakens. Badenoch has two clashing imperatives. To stop the bleeding to reform, she must speak to the impatient right. To rebuild a national coalition, she must look pragmatic and policy first. And every high-profile defection raises the price of reassuring one flank without alarming the other. Her current argument is that reform is a distraction from holding Labour to account and that governing seriousness will win back trust. It is tidy in theory. In practice, narrative beats nuance, and reform is winning narrative minutes, partly because Kemi Badenoch has delivered nothing. 3 lines matter. 1. The future is reform. 2. People who dismiss Brexit now dismiss reform. 3. We took back control and didn't use it. That triangulates anger at managerialism, fatigue with intra-Tory factionalism, and a promise of decisive state action. It is the same battery that powered 2016 and 2019. The difference is that reform must show it can finance, staff and sequence policy rather than just broadcast it, rather than just repeat the old tropes again. The Financial Times has already noted the funding challenge behind the polling surge. Momentum without money hits a wall. Expect reform to court other ex-ministers who can cover briefings on the economy, policing and immigration. Expect the Conservatives to push competence and continuity with a clamp on off message, freelancing. Expect Labour to welcome the split but avoid gloating to keep reform a right of right phenomenon rather than a cross-pressure magnet. Kruger will test a governing readiness script in the media. Corfield will be pushed onto NHS talking head slots to rebut the line that reform is a pub night party. Whether another Tory MP moves is an interesting question. One more would normalise the act and rattle CCHQ. Whether reform can field a credible health platform that squares waiting lists with fiscal restraint, and whether Corfield fronts it, again something to watch out for. Whether Badenoch can land a policy hit on the government that changes the subject from personnel stories to performance. Well, her interview suggests she will try to pivot to welfare and growth, but tomorrow will be the test in Prime Minister's questions. I'm not sure she's going to be doing Prime Minister questions tomorrow because I think Keir Starmer will be busy preparing for Trump, so it may just be deputies. But if it were Badenoch tomorrow, if it is Badenoch tomorrow, let's see whether she can actually achieve something. My money is in the probability in the negative that she won't. Last week, when she actually managed to look competent, I think was a fluke. Maria Corfield's defection is not an earthquake by itself, it is the aftershock of Kruger quake. And it tells you something important about the state of the right. Reform is no longer content to be a pressure group, it is auditioning for opposition. Badenoch's project is to make that audition look shallow, while she rebuilds substance. The side that controls attention will control recruitment. The side that controls recruitment will control the story. Today, on attention and recruitment, reform is ahead. Tomorrow is still there to be fought over.